This is a Meyer lemon tree. It has started to bloom. It smells very nice. Oddly enough, all the blooms seem to be on one branch, which is kind of weird. But it's a tree that I got from Rain Tree Nursery, but it didn't come directly from them. They had it shipped directly from the grower, so it didn't actually go through. It was ordered through Rain Tree Nursery, but it actually came from the grower. It came, and I put it in this. I have this old nice clay pot that I put it in, and it's supposed to be able to withstand some frost, but I'm going to leave it in this pot, make it an indoor plant. I think I might take it outside here during the warm weather. It's mid-April. It's April 15th, actually. We've had a very dry month, unusually dry for here. And I thought we'd take a little bit of time today and look at some native berries, or some berries or edible fruits. This first thing here, I've talked about this on my Facebook page recently. This is a salmonberry. It's in bloom right now. Has pretty little flowers. It is a native shrub here. This actually was a volunteer that started growing here. I've got a number of them around in the woods here, and I just left this one grow, and it's probably 7-8 feet tall right now, perhaps. It's probably about the size that it normally gets. These berries are edible. They're shaped roughly like a raspberry. They're pretty tasty, and they'll come along here pretty shortly. Let's see what else we've got here that I want to talk about. Okay, these are blueberries. They are not blooming yet, or actually here, there's just starting to get their little blooms are just starting to open. These are also very popular amongst native bees. Both of these plants are, and the nice thing about the salmon berries is that they're, of course, not only edible for me, but also for the critters that live around here, birds and such. There's another plant that's very similar to the salmonberry. It's that we have here. It's a thimbleberry. I believe the flowers are whitish instead of this pinkish color, but I don't seem to have too many around here right now. And the thimbleberries, and to some extent the salmonberries, the fruits are very soft, so you don't see them offered commercially because there's no way you could ship them. I suppose, you could commercially grow them and then make them into juice or jam or something, I suppose, but people don't tend to grow them commercially, but they grow quite well here. This is evergreen huckleberry. It is just starting to bloom as well. Again, another plant that the bees and hummingbirds and the berries, of course, are a favorite amongst not only the birds, but also some mammals like bears and deer and squirrels, I suppose. I don't know. Various things. These grow wild here. This one, came up. There's some that came up here wild, and then I kind of encouraged them along here a little bit. I've got several here right now. Over here, this is a red huckleberry, which is a deciduous tree, deciduous shrub. It also has small flowers. The same thing about the fruits. They're edible, tasty. Lots of critters like them, including me. So you can see that we have a number of different berries and fruits and things here that just sort of happen by themselves. Now this is a mahonia. Now this mahonia, or these mahonias here, I planted them here. The only mahonia, these are tall Oregon grape mahonia. I've only seen one Oregon grape on our property that was native, that was not planted by a human, and it was the low variety, which only gets a foot or so off the ground and spreads. These are the tall variety, and you can see this one is growing, is blooming here right now. They get blue berries, which are again popular amongst various critters and birds like them. They're not as they're okay. They're not as tasty as some of the other fruits, but again, a nice native plant. There was another. What else was I going to do? There was another. Snowberry. This snowberry kind of took a hit here. The center part of it died out, but they spread with runners, so it's kind of spreading around here. I don't know. I may tear this one. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I may tear this one out. Snowberry is not blooming yet. They get white berries in the winter, white or pinkish, depending on the variety. They are not edible for humans. They are poisonous, but again, birds can eat them. This is not a native. This is a native to Japan, and it's got wonderful flowers right now. It's a flame andromeda. I didn't notice that until just this moment. But it's not a native, so I don't know if any of the native creatures like it. But it's pretty. It's solid, easy to grow plant. I had talked in the previous video about the crabapple trees that I planted. You can see this one's doing quite well with its leaves, and the other I've got 3 of them here, 3 different varieties, and they're all leafing out right now. I don't imagine they'll have much crab apples this year, their first year, but the goal the first year is to get their roots going, get a good root structure built, and then once that happens, then the tree can grow. And the old saying is the first year they sleep, and then they creep, and then they leap. So the first year things are slower. And then I've got that filbert down here. Filbert, also called hazelnut. That's a native tree around here too. Again, though, these are ones that I planted, not ones that sprouted by themselves. There's one here that has the male catkins right now. Oh, it had them. It had them yesterday. Oh no, here's like one there. They've mostly fallen off already. But it had the male catkins. But it needs a pollinator to grow the nuts. So I did plant the second one. There's this twig here, though, is another dogwood, which hopefully will let me have the nuts in the future. I'm not planning to really eat the nuts, but I've heard that like blue jays really like them. Okay, I'm going to walk around the woods some more here. There's at least one more type of plant I wanted to show you. Here's another of the red huckleberries that we're coming up on. This one, there's an old cedar stump, or the remains of a cedar stump under here, which you can't really see. There's some salal growing on top of it here. And these the red huckleberries love to grow out of old cedar stumps. I don't know why, but that's what they do. And this one is doing that. And it's one that it's a volunteer here, which I just let go because it's in a nice spot. You see it here at the top of the driveway when you first drive up. It's about 7 feet tall, and we'll get some nice flowers. So here we're going to the top of the driveway, and this is where I did see years ago. I saw there was a low growing mahonia on this bank here somewhere. I haven't looked for it lately. This is not a native plant. This is a so-called Himalayan blackberry. It's an invasive blackberry which grows everywhere here. I hack them back whenever I can see them, just to try to keep them under some kind of control, because they just will take over. Berries are tasty. Thorns are horrible, and they'll just kind of crowd everything out. You can see there's a lot of brush lying here. We had a nasty winter and a lot of branches, a lot of dead branches that had been in the trees, which on a dug fir like these, you can see the lower branches that are shaded tend to die off, and most of the new growth is at the top. But even some of the branches that were growing fell. This is the backside of a western hemlock right here, which I had planted here. It's also a native tree, and it provides food for lots of different kinds of songbirds. Okay. We've got lots of ferns just starting to come this time of year. More huckleberry, both kinds of huckleberries. This is this looks like a red currant. We'll see if I can find one that's actually in bloom. Here's a bloom from up here. We can see there's some of the salmon berries up here in this untended. This part, on their side of the driveway here, has just been left. It just kind of goes wild, and anything that wants to grow back in here, I'm pretty much okay with it, except I do try to hack back here you can see, this is oh no, that one, yeah, here's some more of the salmon berries. There's another salmon berry here. Oh, here we go. Okay, this is I believe this is a red currant, another native plant. This one, it has lots of little tiny white drooping flowers. This one, you could do something with the fruits. I've heard the raw, you can't eat them raw. Apparently the fruits are raw, poisonous. But this is a good. These get bright red berries, very very showy red berries in the summertime. And again, it's one I want to leave for the critters, especially the band-tailed pigeons. Hopefully, if we get lucky, we'll hear a band-tailed pigeon, but I don't hear one right now. But the band-tailed pigeon, they're not endangered, but they're a native bird. They're not endangered, but they're definitely declining. And so I like to do my part to try to help them, and that is one of their primary foods in the summertime. They nest in the spring, and then it's one of their foods they have after they've nested is the red elderberries. There's different kinds of elderberry. The red one is the one that we have here growing native, growing wild. Another plant that gets interesting fruit that's edible is the salal. It's a ground cover. It's this stuff right here. It has it's a tough plant. It has kind of waxy leaves. It tends to grow fairly slowly, but once it gets a hold, it'll start to spread. And this is pretty much all. This was just a bank. This whole bank here along the driveway when we moved in was like this area right here, which was it's just a dirt bank with some moss growing on it, which I encouraged. I tried planting a few things in here, but didn't really. Here's a little bit of a ground cover that was left over here that I had originally planted, but it didn't really take. But the salal moves in by itself, and it's doing quite well here. And they have umbels. They have the flowers look something like a blueberry flower. They get nice berries that are edible. Probably, they're not as tasty as a blueberry, but they're okay. And there's another red elderberry back there. Here's one here growing right here next to the driveway is a salmon berry. Another salmon berry. So you can see we've got quite the crop native things just let them go. This whole field right here has got a lot of salmonberries in it. There's one right there. And then this large shrub right here is a red elderberry. And it hasn't bloomed yet. Here you can see the green green cluster there. It'll be the flowers. So it's going to have a couple of really big clusters. And it gets the bright red berries, like I said. And then there's more salmon berries here. In the backyard, I've got some blueberry bushes back over there. That group of bushes over there are all blueberries. There's different kinds. There's some deciduous blueberries, some evergreen blueberries. I kind of mix them together. Helps them. If you have a couple different varieties, it helps them pollinate. And the thing I like to do too with these plants, native and not native, or natural and not natural, whichever you want to think of it, is have ones that bloom at different times. Because I'm also trying to encourage, native bees are struggling around the world, and I'm trying to encourage my native bee population here. This is an Indian plum, which I planted last year. The deer thought this was especially tasty, but they haven't found it yet this year, but they'll probably be by. But I'm hoping that expands there. This is a rosemary. I had a rosemary back in there, and it was getting crowded out, and I kept trimming the bushes around it and to try to keep it so it could keep growing. And eventually I thought, maybe I should just move it. So I just moved this yesterday, or the day before yesterday. I planted it this way. You can see it's all growing in one direction, because if you imagine this was swung around the other way, is going toward the sun, and the rest of this was all shaded. The dead part here, or the part with no leaves, was all shaded out. So I'm hoping that maybe this comes back and starts to grow. It's still got some nice rosemary. This is a nice rosemary. It's a culinary one that I use a lot for cooking when I need rosemary. But I've cleaned out some of the dead stuff. I've got a little bit of dead stuff left in here that I need to clean out yet. There was a lot of dead material in there. It had been built up over many years. You can see it's been around for a while. Rosemaries typically don't have, a stalk that's that big. But hopefully it'll come back. And if it doesn't, maybe I'll go buy a rosemary and put in there. It'll get more sun here. Rosemaries are drought tolerant. They like our climate here. So I think that's probably a good spot for it. I can show you where I used to have it. I don't know what this guy is. I planted this years ago and forgot. It's got a lot of flowers. I think the bees like it, so I hope the bees like it. Here's a branch that just came down overnight. These are Mexican orange, which have a nice smell. They're a little bit, comparing them to that Meyer lemon we have in the house. These Mexican orange, which are native to California, have a little bit of a harsher smell. This one just started to open its flowers right there, and they grow very readily here. I planted a few, and this is like one plant here, this whole thing, and then there's like one more plant over here, and there's one more plant back in there, and they just take off. This is a rhododendron here, which of course is a native plant. This is where the rosemary was, and you can see what was happening between that wee noise is a towhee. Reep, he says, or he probably. There's a flame andromeda back in there, and then these Mexican oranges and this Doug fir. You can see that even here today it's early afternoon on a bright sunny day, and back in there where a lot of that plant was, it's all still in the shade, only this front part. So I'm just going to, now that that's gone out of there, I can just let this grow back, and over the next couple of years, this will just probably fill in. The idea here, when I started planting stuff right here, because that's the direction one of my neighbors there, and so the idea was, this was open when I moved in. The idea here is you've got these, you know, they've got this nice Mexican orange bank here, and the Doug fir tree coming down, meeting it, and this makes a nice covering. Plus, the Mexican orange plants smell nice, and they're evergreen. So is the rhododendron, of course. So that's kind of a quick look today of mostly edible stuff. A lot of it's native, some of it's not, we've mentioned today, and but mostly a focus on edible plants that I've got scattered about the yard here. And the fig trees are just starting to bloom. I've just ordered some goji berry bushes from Rain Tree, which I thought I'd give a try out in the front yard. Read good things about them. They're supposed to be easy to grow and self-pollinating and all those good things. So these figs are self-pollinating. The native figs use a special wasp that they have to have, but we don't have that wasp here, I don't think, even though we do have a lot of native pollinators. But these that you buy, a fig that you would buy from a nursery, they're self-pollinating. So they don't need a pollinator plant, and they don't need a pollinator bug. They can just pollinate themselves. The fig flowers are incredibly small. Probably don't even notice them. We've never really seen them, but yet we get the figs. So I'm going to end it right there. And a great, wonderful day of staying at home. Hope everybody's staying at home and staying healthy. And see you next time on Paul's Yard Walk.